All right. Warm welcome, everyone. Thank you for being here this evening. I'm excited to share this information with you and to connect with you around your health, nutrition, and questions that you might have. Many of you may know that I spent I kind of see my life separated into, or at least my work life separated into three. So the first third was primarily fitness. And I was an exercise physiologist and fitness director at various clubs and whatnot. And then after my kids were born, that's when the kind of the second third of my life came in, and there was an incredible passion for nutrition. Just something woke up. It felt like something very old. It feels like it's something that I've probably delved into quite deeply for many lifetimes. It felt quite natural to me. I love being in the kitchen. I love teaching. I've taught hundreds of cooking classes in my kitchen and written 4 cookbooks. I have a 5th one actually just sitting right here in my computer, but I think I probably won't publish it because Medical Medium his books are 100 times better than mine. I prefer to kind of steer people in that direction. But I have recently started changing some of the recipes in that book that's in my computer. So who knows? It may come out one day with some recipes to share. And I also do share some of them on my blog. So if you go to that section of my website, you'll see some of my favorite recipes that align with the principles that I'll be speaking about this evening, and that became really clear to me were important as I was studying the medical medium information. And then the last third of my life has been primarily soul coaching. And what happened was that after spending so many years in both fitness and nutrition and really enjoying it and doing a lot of teaching and training, I did yoga teacher training, like actually was a trainer, and I trained holistic nutritionists with the Canadian School of Natural Nutrition for 20 years. So I had both a practice in those modalities, but also I trained others. And so it was quite a passion. And yet what I began to find was that there's so much information out there, and I was finding a disconnect between what people knew and what they were actually doing. And also through looking at my own experience with consistently caring for my whole being. And I began to understand and realize that there is this light inside each one of us, and call it the soul, that is here to guide us, to orient us to the best choices for each one of us individually. And I just really began to feel most alive when I was helping people to connect to that inner guidance, so that while external information can be very helpful, case in point, medical medium information, it can be also very confusing because we're inundated with information nowadays. And I know a lot of people, most people I speak to, have a really hard time with actually following through with self-care, and also feeling confused and trying this one and that one. And that's all part of the process. But now I really feel quite passionate about helping people to connect to soul. And the interesting thing about nutrition is that on the one hand, nutrition helps us to connect more deeply to soul, because nutrition is an energetic, really, it's energy work, because food is energy. And as we take in really clean and spiritually powerful food, it really clears the way for the light of the soul to come through. And at the same time, as the light of the soul comes through, our capacity to naturally orient towards foods that will nourish our whole being is enhanced. And so it works hand in hand. Now, in my experience, I was always oriented towards more of a plant-based diet. I've been a vegan, well, a little bit of vegetarianism in there, but close to 40 years now, and was really quite passionate about finding ways to make plant-based food delicious and teaching other people how to incorporate that into their lives. And at the same time, even with many, many years of different types of cleanses and really clean eating, no alcohol, organic foods for the most part, lots of spiritual work, I was still in my 40s and into my 50s beginning to get symptoms that were quite troublesome, really, and worrisome too. I was having some pretty major issues with my eyes it was feeling quite worrisome, a lot of pressure and floaters. And yeah, that was kind of that was when I started praying. And shortly after is when I was introduced to medical medium. But I was also saying in my newsletter that I had quite severe restless leg syndrome, which at first I thought it was just energetic releases, but I realized later on that it was heavy metals and viral debris that was um, that was hmm, inflaming the nerves. And this is Anthony William, medical medium, helped me to understand that. And there were other issues as well. And so in about 2017, I was meditating one day and something just dropped in and said, go see Mary O'Reilly, who was my naturopath at the time. And I hadn't really planned on seeing her. I was feeling okay. But I did call her up and she said to me, oh, I'm so glad you called. She says, I'm retiring in 2 weeks. Why don't you just come and visit me? So we actually had a visit, not an appointment, and just chatted about what was going on in each of our lives. And she had a stack of the medical medium's first book on her desk. And she says, I want you to have this. She says, you're going to love it. She knew a little bit about my approach to nutrition. And part of me was, of course, very grateful, and part of me was also skeptical. When you call a book medical medium, you just never know what you're going to get. But I brought it home and I put it on my desk. And the very next day, I had a client who had diabetes. And I thought, I wonder what this guy says about diabetes. Because I had always felt that fruit and sugars were not the issue. I really was quite disturbed by the number of people and so-called experts out there telling people to avoid fruit. It just didn't make any sense to me. In my being, in my heart, it always felt like fruit was the most powerful food and the most innocent food and the most spiritually uplifting food. And sure enough, he did not recommend decreasing fruit. He actually recommended increasing fruit. But the key there, he recommended drastically reducing fats in the diet, all the overt fats in the diet. And he also spoke about how the liver was also a big issue with that. And in that book, he began to speak about how to clear the liver. But one of the primary ways is to reduce the level of fats that you're consuming. And so I thought, oh, that's really cool. And so I just read what he had to say. I saw my client. And later on that evening, I began to delve into that book. And the very first chapter in Medical Medium, I think that's what the first book is called, he speaks about how he got his gift. And what I'll do when I send out the recording for this, I'll send you also a recording of me reading that first chapter of the first book. I found it quite profound and touching, and it really gave me a foundation from which to understand where all of the information was coming from. So when Anthony William was 4 years old, he was lying in bed one Sunday morning and he began to hear a voice. And it was like the voice was just outside of his right ear. Now, as a 4-year-old, he did not understand where that voice was coming from. And he looked around his room and outside the window, and there was nothing there. And he just kind of let it go and continued with his day. He didn't tell his parents about it. And that night, he was at the dinner table with his family and his extended family, as we do, as people did in those days with Sunday dinners. And one of the interesting things was that this man showed up, and Anthony said he had long hair and a long robe, and he just assumed everybody else could see him. And the man said to him, and it was the same voice that he had heard that morning, he said to him, "Go stand next to your grandmother." And which he did. And then he said, "Say the words, lung cancer." And 4 years old, he didn't know either of those words yet, but he managed to get it out after a few tries, and people understood what he was saying. And they got her checked, and sure enough, she had lung cancer. And so this was the beginning of it. And since then, that voice speaks to him 24/7. It never stops. It's just outside of his ear. So it's not like, how sometimes I sometimes hear a voice in my head, like a voice of wisdom, but it's coming from inside of me. But if he blocks his right ear, the voice gets muffled. So it's kind of an interesting phenomenon. I haven't heard of anybody else experiencing spiritual information in this way. And since that time, basically, he asked him, who he was, and this voice called himself Spirit of Compassion. And through the years, Anthony has understood that Spirit of Compassion is an energy, a frequency of compassion, which is much needed nowadays, particularly in the health realm. There are so many people, and people who are really quite committed to their health, that are suffering from mystery symptoms that modern medicine just simply can't help them with. There are many people that can't even get off the couch or out of bed in the morning. People who are suffering from symptoms that take away their capacity to enjoy life and to work and to fulfill their soul's promise. And so Spirit of Compassion explained to Anthony that they had agreed prior to his lifetime that he would come in and he would be the voice of Spirit of Compassion. He would share this information that would help millions of people to heal, which is what is actually happening now. And so for this first part of his life, like even when he was in school as a little kid, he would get health readings on the people around him, on the kids around him. Anywhere he would go to a mall and he'd get help, even if he didn't want to hear it, which was most of the time he didn't want to hear it, but he'd get readings on people's livers and kidneys and heavy metals and what viruses they had. And so essentially, Spirit of Compassion was educating him about the nature of disease in the 20th century, because it's very different today than it was even 100 years ago, because we're dealing with all these new chemicals, more heavy metals than ever, a lot of interference from chemtrails and all kinds of things. So we're dealing with more than ever, which means that our bodies are being challenged more than ever. And so since that time, as a teenager, he began to work in a grocery store. I don't think in those days there was even really many health food stores around, but he worked in a grocery store, and people would come in, and people began to know that he was really good at, like, he would just meet somebody and say, "Okay, you've got a heart issue." And how do you know that? How do you, have you seen my doctor's records? But he just knew. And then he would start to tell them, "Okay, well, you should be eating apples." Or eventually the store manager bought a juicer so he could go into the back and make celery juice for people. So this started as a very young kid. And for the most part, in the early days, he was doing it sort of half-heartedly. He did not want that life. He didn't feel that he wanted to completely dedicate himself, one, to hearing all this information about people, that he just wanted to live his life. And he really resisted it for a long time and even considered ending his life. At one point, he asked Spirit of Compassion if there was anybody else on the planet who had his gift, because he thought, well, maybe if there's somebody else out there, then I won't feel quite so lonely or burdened. And he said, there are other people that receive and are tuned in to the Spirit of Compassion, but he's the only one that hears it in that way. And it's an agreement that he had, and that he has to care about people. And this is what he's here to do in this lifetime. And then I won't spoil it for you, but in his early 20s, I believe, he had a miracle happen. And that was when he gave himself to his mission on the planet. When I found out about him, like, he had written his first book. So he worked with clients. He had a 4-year waiting list for clients. He was very, very well known for what he did. And when I read his first book, I think I called in to try to get an appointment. And at that time, as soon as he started writing the books, he stopped taking clients, because his mission was now to write these books so that we can become experts on our own health. And in the last 8 years, he's written 8 books, and they're Bibles. Like, they're huge. Like, this is Cleanse to Heal here. Very, like, 600 pages or something, and they're packed. And the information doesn't repeat itself. That's what else is incredible. So now there are, I think, 8 or 9 books even. So just a whole, like, health encyclopedia. So essentially his mission is to educate us so that we can be our own advocates. Obviously, he would love for doctors, and there are doctors and naturopaths that are adopting his methods as well. Many nutritionists are adopting his methods. And so it really is getting out there. He has 5 million followers on Instagram. I don't know about the other platforms. I don't follow any. Well, I do follow YouTube. And he does have some really nice videos that he does on YouTube as well. So that's a little bit about Anthony William and Spirit of Compassion. I do want to say that, there are some people who say to me that when they hear Anthony speak, they get turned off. You get different versions of him. Sometimes he's quite wound up. He seems a little bit manic and he repeats himself. But I think that's because he's also, like, he's trying to speak, but he's also got Spirit of Compassion speaking in his ear. But what struck me about him, and this comes through when he speaks, but also incredibly in the books, there was so much integrity there. Like, to me, when I first opened the first book, Medical Medium, I could feel the frequency. It was perfection. It was, and this was without even reading it all. It was just, there's something really special about the writings. They're quite brilliant. And I own all of the books. I haven't read them all cover to cover, but it just feels like each book, like, let's just say the first book is like a 250-piece puzzle, and it's got 250 pieces of the human health puzzle, and they all fit in beautifully well. There's no contradictions. It's quite incredible, I find. And then the second book, it's the exact same puzzle, but now it's 500 pieces. And then the next book is 1,000 pieces. So the puzzle stays the same. As I say, there's no contradictions. It all feels very logical, intuitive, simple. He doesn't make it any more complicated than it needs to be. Compassionate. So you don't read it thinking, oh, I got to do better. I haven't done this properly. Oh, I've done something wrong. None of that. It is there. It's just oozing with compassion. When you read, you just feel encouraged. You feel uplifted. You feel like you are regaining trust in your body and that you can heal. He reminds you of that over and over again. The other thing is he is incredibly generous with the information. The only thing Anthony sells is books. That's it. He doesn't sell programs. He doesn't sell memberships. Not that there's anything wrong with those things, because I sell programs and memberships, but it's just that he needs to get the information out there. The other thing is, if you never bought a book, if you go online and you write medical medium fatty liver or medical medium psoriasis, it's all there. There's nothing hidden. He's just so generous with the information. The books are worth it to have, mind you, because everything's there at your fingertips, right? And you can sort of leaf through them and put them by your bedside or on your living room table. Beautiful, always beautiful pictures. Every recipe has a gorgeous shot. And yeah, so the presence of the books, but many libraries have them as well because they are such a popular series. And that I spoke a little bit about recipes. Each book has extensive recipes that I find are all very simple. I find them to be delicious. Now, you have to get used to this way of cooking, mind you, because there is no salt and there's no oils in them. So you're actually adding flavor by using really nice fresh foods. You're using spices and herbs, lemon juice, lime juice, things like that. And you're welcome to add salt if you want to, but what he says is that the less salt you have, the more hydrated you are, and the more the body is able to cleanse. Because when we're dehydrated, everything kind of gets contracted and hard, right? And so lots of hydration in your body helps to dissolve the residues that are in your system. And so this is why you don't want to really be consuming, or not that you don't want to, but you want to be aware that salt will dehydrate you, coffee will dehydrate you, vinegar will dehydrate you, alcohol obviously will dehydrate you, not drinking enough water, not eating enough fresh foods and salads and things like that. So he speaks a lot, and really all of his protocols, and particularly the 369 cleanse that we do on the Nutritional Rebirth, is really all about hydration so that the body can really pick up the residues and the toxic deposits that are in the tissues and remove them safely. But I love the recipes very much, and you refer to them a lot. I find it so helpful because it's one thing to know why you're having the health issues you're having, which he's very clear about. And then it's another thing to also know, okay, now this is what you need to do to heal. And then the third piece is, okay, here's the recipes. And in time, you may, obviously, if you're, if you're passionate about cooking, or even if you just like to cook or whatever, you'll figure things out on your own as well. But they're a really great starting point. Okay. So when I began this evening, one of the things that I mentioned was that I feel that it's quite important to gradually orient more and more to the intuitive guidance within, that really, and that not just in terms of how we eat, but in terms of how we navigate our relationships, in terms of how we live our lives, where we put our energy. We have this intuitive, clear, authentic guidance that is flowing through us all the time, and that is here to connect us with those things that are most supportive of our being and what our soul's contract is in this lifetime. And I feel very grateful, extremely grateful, to have found medical medium, or he found me. I'm sure I would have eventually, but I feel grateful to have found him so early, because there was just the one book at the time, and now I think people who encounter him, it might feel a little overwhelming because there's so many books. But regardless, I'm sure you'll be able to make your way through things. But also the fact that all of the symptoms that I was having have pretty much cleared up. Sometimes the restless leg gets stirred up, especially when I'm doing the cleanse, because it is coming from viral deposits as well as heavy metals. And when you're cleansing, each time you do the 369, your system digs deeper into the liver. And so what happens is that there's usually a couple of nights where I feel a little bit agitated in my nervous system. But then after the cleanse is over, I feel more settled, more relaxed in my nervous system than ever. So it's a progress, and that's why doing multiple 369s is so helpful, because you're not going to get all the toxins out in one cleanse. It wouldn't be safe to do that, and also we're carrying a whole lifetime of toxins, not to mention those that we have inherited from our parents and from their parents, etc. For example, the heavy metals that are in our bodies could be 1,000 or 2,000 years old, and they get passed on to us through the womb and just through our parents. So yeah, so I just really wanted to underscore that while I I would say that I unreservedly recommend the Anthony Williams approach to nutrition and to health. And at the same time, I've never been a follower. I really do my best to think for myself, and I think I'm quite kind of stubborn in that way, or even arrogant sometimes. I'll figure it out on my own. I'd rather do things my own way. And yet, I guess I was in a really difficult place when I was having those health issues, and nothing I was doing seemed to be really helping that much. And so I'm very, very grateful that I came across Anthony, and that my intuition told me that the information that he was sharing was going to be helpful for me. And in fact, it was. Like, even after 1 month of following the protocols, I began to feel quite a bit better, and just really relieved that I had found a way that I was quite confident would help me to rebuild my health and to reverse those symptoms. The thing about the medical medium protocols too is that, as I said, they're very kind, they're very compassionate, and he never says you have to be completely plant-based. You could be paleo and use the protocols. You could be vegan and use the protocols. But essentially, it's just about incorporating those things that feel right for you at this time. You can incorporate as little or as much as you want to. And as you go along, you may find yourself wanting to incorporate more. So he's really encouraging you to be in your own process. He's not asking you to throw away your own intuition and your own unique life, because we're all dealing with different things, and we may have to overcome certain beliefs that we have taken on around food and nutrition. For example, the fruit thing. A lot of so much fruit fear out there nowadays. And so it takes a lot for people to get over that and to realize, yeah, it's okay to eat 3 or 4 bananas in a day, and then to have a mango or an apple later on, and then to have blueberries later on. And it's okay to eat potatoes. So there's a lot of nightshade fear as well. And Anthony fully encourages tomatoes, potatoes. He says they don't contribute to arthritis, as some of the holistic nutrition experts have said. In fact, they can help to reverse it. He says what does contribute to the arthritis is the dairy and the fats that you're having on top of your nightshades, right? Because normally if you have tomatoes, you're also having cheese. If you're having potatoes, you're also having butter or cheese. And so it's not the foods themselves, it's what we're having with them. So he alleviates a lot of food fear and also clarifies why certain foods really aren't that helpful. There's a lot of trends out there nowadays that are not helpful at all. In fact, that are contributing to our symptoms, and he helps to give clarity around what exactly is happening. So things, for example, like bone broth or fish oils or apple cider vinegar, all of these things are not helpful at all for our health. And it makes sense when you begin to understand the whole picture of the medical medium approach. It makes sense that these foods would not be helpful because the bone broth, for example, has quite a large amount of fat, which is very burdening to the liver. And the more fat you throw at the liver, the less it's able to detoxify. And it's, you know, it's got 4,000 functions to do. And if it's being burdened by all that fat on an ongoing basis, it won't be able to do all the functions that it's supposed to be doing. What's the other one that I mentioned? Oh, apple cider vinegar. So that's dehydrating. He would rather see you doing celery juice in the morning. If you're looking to improve your digestion, because I know some people are taking it in warm water in the morning to improve digestion. And in fact, it actually in time will do the opposite as it dehydrates the liver. So if you really want to improve your digestion, your best ally there is celery juice. So if you haven't heard about the medical medium, you may have heard about celery juice because it's quite a popular trend right now. Some people are picking it up without actually giving him credit, but he is the one that has been speaking about this for 20 or 25 years. And all of his protocols include drinking celery juice in the morning. Generally lemon water first in the morning. So this is all about, as I mentioned earlier, hydration. And so if you do the 369, you'll be drinking anywhere from 16 to 32 ounces of lemon water in the morning. So it's fresh squeezed lemon juice in just preferably some kind of filtered or purified water. And then you follow that with celery juice. So he calls celery juice the most important medicine of our time. Again, because we are dealing with so much buildup of viral byproducts, which I'll speak about that in a moment, but basically viruses are the root cause of pretty much 95% of our symptoms, I would say. Those in conjunction with heavy metals, they actually kind of work together. The viruses consume the heavy metals, and that's what creates the toxicity in the body. But getting back to celery juice, it's the one food that helps to pretty much boost every part of your physiology, from your digestion. It rebuilds the walls of the gut. It helps to remove residue from the walls of the small intestine and the large intestine. So it's the mineral salts that are in there are sort of like, it's almost like a soap that lifts that off. It also kills off the viruses that might be hiding beneath the walls or beneath the residues that are sitting against the wall of your intestine and creating maybe digestive issues and bloating and constipation and irritable bowel. And then once it gets into the liver, it begins to start cleansing and cleaning and dissolving the pockets of residues that might be there. Because what happens when the liver takes in toxins through your food, through your water, through your air, you know, a lot of it is we may be trying to eat properly, but we don't know there was pesticide residue on that food, or we don't know that the water that we bathed in was bringing toxins into our body. We don't know the air that we breathed, or the animal flesh that we ate had some kind of toxins in them. So, but what the liver does to deal with those is, as the food gets digested, it goes to the liver first, and it does its best to pull out the things that could be damaging to the brain, first of all, but also the rest of the nervous system and the rest of the organs. And as it pulls those out, if it doesn't have the time to purge, it just drives them deeper into the liver. So it tries to kind of tuck them, just like you would tuck things away in your attic or in your basement. That's what the liver is doing. So there's this core in the liver, the 3 levels down, where a lot of the toxins get kind of deposited. But of course, what happens in time is that when it's overloaded, it begins to spill into the other layers of the liver. And that's when we begin to have other major issues with our health. And so the celery juice helps to begin to slowly and safely dissolve. You don't want to be removing so much that it overwhelms the rest of the system, or that you end up reabsorbing it because the system is just not capable of handling it. So it's an intelligent cleanse as well. And as you read about the 369, it's really interesting how even the way that it's kind of packaged in 9 days and 3 sections to the cleanse, there's reasoning behind all of that. There's reasoning behind what you do in the morning, what you do in the evening, what you have for lunch and dinner. So that I find really quite brilliant. And beyond that, when you do it, you feel the effects. You feel clearer physically. You feel lighter. Digestion improves. You might find your eyes and your skin begins to glow a little bit more. Your energy perks up. And there could also be some days where your energy doesn't feel as good because your body's working so hard, and that's, to be expected. Same thing with the emotional body. Generally by the end of a cleanse, there's quite a bit of clarity emotionally. That doesn't mean that there might not be a few days during the cleanse where emotions begin to move out, because of course you can't separate the emotional body from the physical body. And so if we have unintegrated emotions in our body, when we begin to eat high vibration foods and when we begin to dissolve the toxic residues, oftentimes out with that will also come certain emotions that are ready to be liberated. But the foods help us with that. They help to make it gentle. They help to support us. Like every fruit and every vegetable, every herb, not only has an effect on our physiology, they actually also have a profound effect on our emotional body and on our spiritual body. And he's got one book, it was the second book that came out, called Life-Changing Foods. I love that book. And that's the one where he speaks about, he's got the second edition now, so he's expanded it, but he speaks about different fruit and vegetables, 80 of them in total, and what they do for our body, what symptoms they help with, what diseases they help with, but also what they do for us emotionally and what they do for us spiritually, right? And you want that on your side, because we're not just eating to help our physical body. We all understand we're a mind. We want a clearer mind. We want a wise mind. We want a perceptive mind. We want an open mind, and food can help with that. And emotionally, we want to feel alive emotionally. We want to feel freedom emotionally. We want to feel the capacity to allow emotions to come and go and not to remain imprisoned in our body, because of course that's going to affect our health as well. And we want to be connected to who we are as a soul and express that. There's nothing more beautiful and joyful than to know who you are and to express that in the world. And the food that we eat is assisting us in that way. And Anthony again goes into some beautiful writings about that. And not only that, with each food in that book, that Life-Changing Foods book, he talks about how to get the most out of it. I remember, for example, for kiwis, he said there's a certain time of the day to eat kiwis that is the most powerful. Can't remember what they are. I think it was 9 a.m., noon, and 3 p.m. But don't quote me on that. And he also speaks about, say, for example, with apples, that if you really want to get the benefit of apples, he encourages you to eat 2 or 3 a day for a while, and then you'll feel it. In a week, you'll feel it. You'll see it in your skin. You'll feel it in your digestion. So he tells you how much of a food to eat as well in order to get those benefits. And there's so much more. I mean, obviously, 10 books with thousands of pages, but I think I'll just sort of kind of curb it there and look at some of the other things that I wanted to say and that I mentioned I would get to. And meanwhile, if you'd like to begin to write any questions that you have in the chat, I'll take a look at them. So one of the things that I mentioned that I would be speaking about this evening is how do we avoid food fear and rigidity? You know, there is a trend out there, and I don't think it's a bad trend. I know that I was there for a while where, you know, maybe we've gone from one diet to the next and we get very tight around the rules of the diet, and it sort of takes the joy out of eating and out of living, because food is supposed to be joyful. It's supposed to be sensual and just easy and nourishing. And so when it gets to the point where we begin to start feeling tight, you wonder if it's actually doing you any good, right? And I know that I went through periods like that, and it may be a normal phase that we go through as we transition towards a more peaceful approach to eating. But at the same time, as I was mentioning earlier, I don't see anything in what he shares or in the books, like verbally or in the books, that encourages that type of rigidity. And in fact, I would say that even though my diet is probably more, how would I put it? Is very precise, you know, it's very precise, but I don't feel rigid about it. I feel that it's a joy to get up in the morning and to drink my lemon water and celery juice, because I think that one of the things that is really important is to not only apply the information, but to notice how it makes you feel, not just in your body, but in your mind, in your heart, in your spirit. Because when we notice these things, when we bring awareness to these things, this is what gives us momentum, right? We fall in love with how we feel. And then we also notice how we feel when we go off track for a while. And it's okay. That's normal to go off track, or maybe to eat more fat, or who knows, to not drink our celery juice for a while. These things happen for all of us, but we notice what happens and we have the tools to get back on track. So I think that you'll find that as you get into the information, it is anything but rigid and fear inducing. At the same time, also, one of the things that a lot of us struggle with is emotional eating. So maybe we do well all day long, we follow all the, you know, the things that make us feel good, and then by evening time, we find ourselves reaching for things that we know aren't the best for us, but maybe our days sort of begin to weigh on us, and we use food to soothe our emotions. And there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, as human beings, we're all carrying not only our own lifetime worth of emotions, but that of previous generations as well, not to mention the collective. So there's a lot of emotional energy that we're carrying in our system. And anything that we do to help us to relax in the midst of the emotional energy is absolutely fine, absolutely understandable, and good. But at the same time, if what we're eating to soothe our emotions makes us feel tired and groggy and grumpy the next day because our liver is so burdened, then, you know, we could rethink that, right? And so there are ways that we can soothe emotions on this approach, maybe with heavier foods, more potatoes, sweet potatoes, squashes, maybe gluten-free pasta. You know, there's lots of comfort food that is available to us, and it just kind of, it shifts, you know. Like one of the comfort foods that I make is and this may not taste or sound really good to a lot of you, but I guess that changes in time. But he's got this breakfast oatmeal cookie, I think it's called. And I don't know, when I'm craving something kind of warm and cookie-ish and stuff like that, that's what I make. And so essentially what you do is you mash a banana and or two or however many, and then you throw in some oats, a little bit of cinnamon, and some raisins if you'd like, or cranberries. And then you just form them to cookies and you bake them in the oven at 350 for 25 minutes or something like that. And if you ate the whole tray, it's completely fine. There's zero fat, or not zero fat. There'll be a little bit in the banana and in the oats, but and in an amount that your body can handle. And so for me, that's something that I do. Or sometimes I make myself potato nachos, where I just kind of bake sliced potatoes. I always do it on parchment so I don't have to use oil. Make them nice and crisp, and then I make a big whack of guacamole, and I eat that. And that's something that feels soothing for me as well. So those are just a couple of things that I go for. And hopefully you'll find ways, for yourself as well. The other thing that I think that a lot of people have issues with is they can get, quite enthusiastic and excited about, making some changes. And then they find that the people that live in their household aren't quite as on board, right? And I know this can be hard. I know this can be hard. And yet many people have found a way through that. And oftentimes they find in time that their family does come on board, or at least participate with some of the things. So I know that it's possible, as they say, where there's a will, there's a way. But I think most important is use your energy to heal yourself. Don't try to drag your family along, because it's an endeavor in and of itself to make shifts ourselves and to take care of ourselves and to care for ourselves. And as we do that, we learn to trust other people to care for themselves in whatever way feels right for them, and to make shifts and changes themselves in their own time and in their own way. Like, everybody should have the freedom to do that. And I know there's the logistics of, if you are the person making the food in the family, now you've got to perhaps make 2 meals. But what's to say you can't make a beautiful pot of chili? And for those people who want meat on the side or whatever, they can either get them to cook it themselves, or you can make it for them. But there's always ways around it. Again, where there's a will, there's a way. And you may find that your family enjoys some of the recipes, and maybe you throw some salt in there, or you throw a little bit of oil in there, if that makes it more palatable and yummy for them. But you can do that after. You can cook the recipe, according to the instructions, and then people can add whatever they want. So these are just some ideas. Essentially, I think it's important not to get too far ahead of ourselves. 1 meal at a time, I always say. And I keep it simple. Like, I find, especially when life is busy, I eat very similar things, days in a row, and I love it. I don't mind it at all. Like, in fact, if I miss my heavy metal detox smoothie for a couple of days, I start craving it. Same thing with the celery. And so for me, my day would look like lemon water, celery juice, generally some kind of a smoothie, oftentimes the heavy metal detox or the liver rescue, but there's other ones that I like to make as well. And those two, by the way, will show up in the 369. And then 1 meal a day is quite a big salad, like a salad meal. And oftentimes I'll throw potatoes, or I like to throw fruit in salads as well to make them more hearty, because a salad with just vegetables isn't enough calories in my experience. So I'll either have a side of sweet potatoes, or I'll throw potatoes into the salad. Or I love salads with sliced bananas, like lots of bananas and dried fruit and maybe oranges and things like that, plus tons of greens and sprouts and cucumber and things and onions. I love those salads. I could do those every day. And so that would be another meal. And then my last meal would be generally something cooked, like a stew. What have I been doing this week? I have there's a soup that I made, like a sweet potato and cauliflower soup. So I've been doing that. So every week I kind of make something that lasts me 3 or 4 nights, and that keeps me quite happy. All right, I see there's some questions here. Is celery juice different from celery itself? Well, it is coming from celery, but you're making the celery juice with a whole head of celery. And to eat a whole head of celery, one would be a ton of fiber and a lot of chewing. And not only that, you do need to get the celery in a concentration that the celery juice affords. And so it is different. And you can still add celery to your other cooking, but the celery juice itself needs to be plain. You don't add anything to it. You don't water it down. You just juice some celery, or you can also blend it in a high power blender and then throw any, but you have to squeeze it through a nut milk bag to get the fiber out. So if you don't have a juicer, you could use a blender and a nut milk bag. And he does talk about that in the online, actually, on the internet. When you look up celery juice, he'll give you a couple of different ways to make it. I hope that answers your question. So to get the components, the healing components of celery in the right concentration and in the right amounts, you need to go to the straight celery juice. Okay. Yes, yes. If you can't find organic celery where you live, is regular celery okay for juicing? Yes. So there's the other thing, like for so many years, I was kind of like an organic food snob, and while I still do my best to buy organic, again, Anthony has alleviated any kind of rigidity I have around that. You can only do your best, right? But he does talk a lot about how to wash things properly. So now what I do when I come home from grocery shopping, even if it's not organic, even if it is organic, I wash it, because you don't know who's been and touching your food. Like, you don't know that there wasn't raw chicken on the conveyor belt before you put your bag of apples or oranges down there. So I just, put everything in the sink with, some organic dish soap, unscented. Well, no, I don't even know if it's unscented. I don't think it matters. And just wash everything up and then lay it out on the counter to dry. And then it's nice because it's all ready to eat as well. You don't have to think about washing it each time. Okay, what else do we have here? What about natural fats such as avocado, nuts, etc.? Are they heavy on the liver? Yes and no. So what you'll see on the cleanse, on the 369 cleanse, the first 3 days, you're allowed some fat at dinner, but he recommends that you reduce the amount of fat by half of what you would normally have. So if you use olive oil in your salad, then cut it back by half. If you generally throw half a cup of, I don't know, cashews on something, maybe reduce that by half. So you want to start learning to make things and to enjoy things with less fat. And then by the time we get to day 4 through day 9, there are no what he calls overt fats at all. And that includes avocado, nuts, coconut, obviously eggs and dairy. That's not on the cleanse anyways. And so yes, they can be hard on the liver. That said, it depends what symptoms you have going on. It depends what state your liver is in right now. And so as you research your symptoms, and if you find that it makes sense to you that your symptoms are being exacerbated by a burdened liver, then you might want to consider really reducing the quantity of fats. I tend to wait till dinner to have fats. And Anthony recommends that as well. And so at the very least, don't have anything in the morning. Like, don't put flax seeds or yogurt or even nut milks in your smoothies in the morning. Keep them completely fat-free. It'll give your liver a huge break, and it'll also help you to digest and regulate the sugars in the fruit much better as well. So they're not bad, but it really depends on what you're dealing with. And yeah. So, as I mentioned earlier, I love guacamole. I love avocados. I love nuts too, but I'm finding more and more that they don't work the greatest for me. So I do try to limit them. What is Anthony's position on added sugar? Are you talking about white sugar, Glenn? And just clarify that for me, please. And you can certainly, honey would be probably the added sugar if you're talking about, making something sweeter. Honey would be the one that would be, raw honey would be the one that would be most recommended. He's a huge fan of that.
I was referring to diabetes and being associated with sugar, added sugar.
Yeah, no, diabetes is not related to sugar. Diabetes is related to fats. So,
Not
yeah.
added white sugar, or
What's that?
not added white sugar.
Listen, I wouldn't encourage anybody to add white sugar to their food only because, not because it's going to contribute to diabetes, but because it has no nutritional value to it. We are, all of us are in a deficit nutritionally just because of our soils being depleted and just having really, most of us not eaten nutrient dense meals for much of our lives. And so we're all coming from a deficit, which means every meal matters, which means that every calorie that you get in, you want to make sure that it's as nutrient dense as possible, which is your fruits, your vegetables, your herbs, and your wild foods. Those are the kind of the key food groups, really. I see there's a question. I know the medical medium is against drinking from metal containers and reducing metal use. So what does he recommend for cooking with? Pots and pans, ceramic? Yes, ceramic coated. And I see that in a lot of his recipes, he seems to be also using glass pots, which kind of got me peaked. But yes, he does. Here's the other thing that he has is if you go to his website, there's a section called supplements, I believe, but in that part of his website, he also has cookware, all kinds of recommendations for anything from an air fryer to a waffle maker, yeah. So I really appreciate that because it's hard sometimes to make your way through all the stuff on, well, Amazon or wherever it is that you're shopping. And I really appreciate his recommendations. So yes, drinking from water, like from glass. I don't have mine here with me, but I have like a glass bottle with a silicone sleeve on it. And I quite like that. And yes, I think it's Green Life, and there's one other brand for the pans that he recommends. Where do you personally source your fruits and vegetables? Uh, yeah, it's a good question. Well, I used to go to Nature's Emporium. I think you're up near there as well. And I used to go there a lot, but I don't live near there anymore as I'm up in Wasaga Beach. But when I do go down to the city, I usually do a little bit of a haul from Nature's Emporium. And then up here, I have the Superstore. And the first time I walked in there, I almost wanted to cry because I just love Nature's Emporium so much. But oh, you're in Midtown Toronto as well. Yeah. So I'm not sure what there would be down there, but I find the Superstore not bad. Uh, I go in there and I kind of turn on my spidey senses, and I've had some good luck. Like I recently bought this incredible case of mangoes, $7 for 12 mangoes, and they were delicious. I had to let them ripen. I put them in a bag and everything, but boy, once they ripen, amazing. So, and they do carry a fair bit of organic as well. Although what I have found is that even though they have the organic celery, it just doesn't juice properly. I don't know. I'm preferring the juiceability, let's put, of the regular celery. So I throw that in the sink. I usually buy 4 or 5 heads at a time. and throw that in the sink with some little bit of soap, and then just rinse them all off. And then I put them in a drawer in my fridge so that they're all ready to go when I'm in the morning, when I'm ready to make my celery juice. So there's different tricks that you can do to make sure that, you know, things are ready for you. But you'll see once you start, like the morning, almost, you almost do it like in a trance in a way, because it's, you know, lemon water, celery juice, usually heavy metal detox smoothie. I think on the 369, if you do the regular one, the original one, I'm past time now, I just noticed. You'll be doing the liver rescue smoothie, which is mwah, delicious. That's a great smoothie. So let me just show you this for a second here. I'm going to share something just to give you a sense of, where's my share thing? There it is. I want to give you a sense of typical days. So this is just a little bit of a summary of what day one, for example, would be on the original cleanse. So there's 3 versions of it, which is also nice. So there's the original, there's the advanced, and then there's the simplified. So day 1, 16 ounces of lemon water, breakfast and mid-morning snack within the guidelines. So the guidelines are no radical fats, no gluten, dairy, eggs, pork, canola oil. So you could have a smoothie or oatmeal or any kind of fruit, as much as you want. Lunch would be any meal of your choice within the guidelines, which again, no radical fats, gluten, dairy, eggs, pork. And then you could have a hearty soup or stew, salad, fruit, raw vegetables, cooked or sweet potatoes, potatoes or squash. So you're kind of free in the first 3 days. You can sort of do whatever you want. Afternoon snack, you start eating lots of apples. So 2 apples with 1 to 4 dates. And dinner is meal of choice within guidelines, except you can have some fat. For example, a stir fry, curry, salad, steamed vegetables, potato crust pizza, and lots of recipes in the book. In the evening, you can have an optional apple if you're hungry. You're going to have, this is really interesting, you're hydrating in the evening as well. So after dinner, you have 16 ounces lemon water and then a hibiscus lemon or chaga tea. And you might be thinking, oh my goodness, I'll be up peeing all night. But what he says and what I found is when you're hydrated, yes, you may get up to pee, but because you're hydrated and because your blood is nice and thin, you'll actually sleep better and you'll fall back asleep. You'll go pee and you'll fall back asleep. I'm not guaranteeing this, but I'm just saying the chances of you sleeping well because your blood is clearer increases. Okay, and then this is day 5, so we're getting deeper into the cleanse. 16 ounces of lemon water, 16 ounces of celery juice. Then you're doing the liver rescue smoothie, which is bananas, papaya, or mango, dragon fruit. That can be powder or frozen. That's the only kind of weird ingredient, and you'll see if you do join the cleanse, I point you in the direction of where to find it. And then wild blueberries. Lunch, you'll be doing the liver rescue salad plus steamed asparagus. Afternoon snack is 2 apples with 1 to 4 dates plus celery sticks. Don't underestimate that snack. It is so balancing with the sugars from the apple and the dates, plus these mineral salts from the celery sticks. It's a very balancing and satisfying snack. Dinner is liver rescue salad plus steamed Brussels sprouts, and then evening is the same thing with the apple, lemon water, and the tea. Now let me just show you one other thing. Just want to show you what that liver rescue salad looks like. Where are we here? Where's my share? Hello, share. Oh, there you are. Here we go. Okay, so can you see that? Let me make it bigger. So this is actually from the Cleanse to Heal book. So there's 2 books that have this 369 cleanse in it, both the liver rescue as well as the Cleanse to Heal. Now, he first introduced it in liver rescue, and if you have this book, you don't need to buy Cleanse to Heal. But if you don't have either one, I suggest buying Cleanse to Heal. It's a more extensive book, and it's the one that has the 3 versions of the cleanse, and it also has a a nicer version of the liver rescue salad, which you're seeing here. So basically, the liver rescue salad, you have all kinds of options. So first of all, he wants you to have, and this is 1 to 2 servings, so 8 cups of any variety of leafy greens, plus lemon, lime, or orange juiced, and then all these toppings. So there's lots of fruit toppings. As I mentioned, I personally find that to be a beautiful salad. And then you can throw in some fresh figs, some cucumber, celery, tomato, asparagus, cabbage, carrots, sprouts, any kind of herbs, dulse, garlic, onion, radish, bell pepper, sugar snap peas, snow peas, raw cauliflower. Not all together, of course, but you can play around with the ingredients. And of course, there's all kinds of ideas in the book as well. I love the chopped kale salad. I had that for lunch today. It's in this book. The cauliflower and greens bowl is really, really nice too. And you can also have steamed green beans in that salad as well. And so that one you're doing kind of for lunch and dinner, days 4 through 8. So it's kind of, maybe you'll find something you like and just stay with it, or maybe you play around. Okay. Yes, there is a downtown location. Okay, great. So Lisette is going to join us for the cleanse. I'm glad to hear it. That's wonderful. I love I love it when, I mean, we have a kind of a core group that does it a lot, and then people come in and out as they feel called. But every time you do the cleanse, it's different, because you're in a different place. Your body is processing different things. Your heart is processing different things. And so it's really quite fascinating how the cleanse meets you where you're at. And you may even decide to, if you've done the original a number of times, you may decide to try out the advanced one as well, which is a very simple cleanse. It's more intense emotionally because it's completely raw. So you kind of got to be ready for that. And I do recommend that people decide to jump on to to clear your schedule, to really just do the bare minimum for the time of the cleanse, and try not to have too many social things. Maybe if you want to see a friend or something, go for a walk. Stay away from coffee shops and those usual things that might make it difficult for you. And if you do work full time, if you can sort of book off one day during the week, for some self-care and rest. I mean, sometimes people just feel incredibly energetic and they just sail through it. But most of us have 1 or 2 days where we feel a little bit kind of slower and we feel like our body's working hard. And it's good to have space in our days so that we can accommodate that, as well as, if we're doing it for the first time, the learning that's involved. I can do it without even opening a book now because I've done it over 20 times. But if you're doing it for the first time, be gentle, be patient with yourself. I like to just keep the book open on my counter, right, as inspiration, and maybe even create a little bit of an altar around it with some flowers. Or our first meeting next Thursday, which is our opening ceremony, I take us all through a ritual where we write down what our intention is. What is my intention for my body? What is my intention for my soul? What kind of shifts would I like to see in my emotional body or in my mind, in certain maybe thought patterns that I've been stuck in? Who would I like to dedicate this cleanse to? Is there someone in my life that I would like to really carry with me? So these types of things, which potentiates and really helps to uh, intensify, I think, our motivation and our commitment to it. And also, of course, each other, right? I've started cleanses in the past where, if you don't have anybody that you're doing it with, you could easily, at the end of the first day, say, I'll start next week, right? But if you've made that commitment and you have some meetings where you can join with people and we can do a little bit of meditation and centering and integrating and a place to ask questions, this all really helps us to kind of stay on board and to go through it completely. I also send out emails every day that where I answer people's questions and hopefully give you some encouragement and some inspiration for each day. So that will all come through your inbox as we go through the cleanse.